Sunny skies and a high around 19 degrees. Tonight, clear skies and a low near 5 above, and then some more snow tomorrow night.
Switcheroo from the pandemic. Not much vacant retail space these days. There we go.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager. Flowers can be a beautiful gift this Valentine's Day, and helping loved ones securely log into accounts across all devices can outlast any bouquet. Learn more at bitwarden.com. And by Clear Channel Outdoor, an out-of-home billboard company harnessing innovation and technology to connect advertisers with consumers. Billboardsforbusiness.com.
I'm David Brancaccio. 4.1% of retail space in America is empty, meaning most of it is occupied. That's according to a new report out this morning from the commercial real estate firm JLL. That's near an historic low, but that said, construction of new retail space has been sluggish, as Marketplace's Henry Epp reports.
There's pretty strong demand for retail space, so rents have been climbing, says Keisha Virtue at JLL. But new retail in desirable locations is still pretty expensive to build.
Material costs, labor costs, land costs, all those factor in.
The problem is developers can likely make more money right now building other kinds of properties, says Brandon Sveck at CoStar.
If I'm going to have a higher return by building multifamily, by building medical office, that's where I'm gonna choose to allocate my time and resources.
A bunch of store closures might free up more retail space soon. Think Walgreens, Party City, and Macy's. That's happening, Sveck says, because there were fewer closures post-pandemic as cash-flush consumers flocked back to stores.
Certain businesses that maybe had business models that were lacking or store fleets that were underperforming were able to mask that because of this large overall boost in consumption.
But now consumers have gotten a little more discerning with their money, so more chains are closing locations. So retailers that are growing are working with what they can find, says Angie Solanki at Colliers.
I think the retailers are getting much more sophisticated on their store operations, allowing them to be more nimble in going larger or going smaller and adapting to what's available in the marketplace.
Meaning you might soon see a Five Below or Dollar General in a former Walgreens. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
S&P futures are up by less than 0.1%. NASDAQ futures are up 0.2%. Bonds are down again now. The 10-year interest rate is up at 4.6%. The average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage up sharply, 7.13%, according to Mortgage News Daily's calculation.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, aiming to help save time by offering smart business buying solutions so there's more time to focus on growing the business and less time doing the admin. More at AmazonBusiness.com. And by Progressive Insurance. Customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto. Learn more about bundling at Progressive.com. And by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Thinkorswim. More at Schwab.com.
This week, we're bringing you a personal story about racial discrimination in housing in America in Unlocking the Gates. Marketplace special correspondent Lee Hawkins learned his family got into their house after a nighttime real estate deal allowed black families to buy in a Minnesota suburb. Today, how discrimination in the state of Minnesota became national policy, aided and abetted by wealthy business owners and politicians. Now, Lee grew up east of St. Paul, a town called Maplewood, where entrepreneurs named James and Francis Hughes had opened the gates for dozens of families like his.
Before Maplewood could become a community where black families could thrive, it was a place where they weren't even welcome. I read an article about an organization called Mapping Prejudice, which identifies clauses that say this house should never be sold to a person of color. So we had this talk. Do you remember that talk?
I certainly do. It was 2018.
Here's co-founder Penny Peterson.
You gave me the name of Mr. Hughes. Interestingly, after the Hughes bought it in 1946, a guy called Richard Nelson, who was living in Maplewood, started putting covenants around it.
There were people who were making statements that were basically explicitly excluding Negroes from life, liberty, and happiness. One was a former lieutenant governor.
The first covenant seems to be by Edmund G. Walton, but he needs outside capital. And so he starts courting this guy called H.B. Scott, who is land agent for the Burlington Railroad in Iowa, and he's immensely wealthy. Scott basically underwrite this thing called what will be eventually known as Seven Oaks Corporation. He gets this in place in 1910. Walton, via Henry Scott, puts the first covenant in. He doesn't want to have his name associated with this. I mean, it is a violation of the 14th Amendment. Let's be clear about that. But within a few years, these things are not only recorded, but Walton is advertising in the newspaper about covenants. So it's totally respectable. And then, this is where Thomas Frankson comes in Ramsey County. He's still in the legislature when he puts his first covenant property together, Frankson's Como Park. And in 1913, he's advertising in the newspapers.
Michael Corey, Associate Director of Mapping Prejudice, explains how these covenants were enforced.
Theoretically, you could take someone to court if they violated the covenant and they would lose the house. The house would revert back to the original person who put the covenant in.
So I'm now clear on how these wealthy and powerful figures in my home state came up with a system to keep anybody who was not white locked out of the housing market. I'm still not clear on how these ideas spread around the country.
This is the moment when these national realty boards are being formed. And so all of these people are in these rooms saying, hey, we've got this innovative technology. It's a racial covenant. And when you get to the era of the New Deal, like these are the people who are on the boards that are like setting federal policy. And a lot of this stuff gets codified into federal legislation. So it starts as a private practice, becomes the official policy of the U.S. government.
Our Lee Hawkins references a former Minnesota Lieutenant Governor, Thomas Frankson, and his role in normalizing racial covenants. In tomorrow's report, we'll hear from that state's current Lieutenant Governor about contemporary efforts to address racial disparities in home ownership. The full version of Lee's reporting, Unlocking the Gates, is streamable from marketplace.org. I'm David Brancaccio with our morning report. From APM, American Public Media.